The chamber was massive, carved from a single asteroid and polished until it gleamed like dark glass. 47 species sat in their designated sections, arranged in a perfect circle around the center platform. Some breathed methane through filters. Others floated in gravity bubbles filled with liquid ammonia. A few existed as energy patterns contained in specialized fields. They all watched the human woman standing alone in the center. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her gray suit crisp despite the 18-hour journey from Earth. She was 53 years old, with silver threading through her black hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of too many late nights reading treaty documents. Behind her, the holographic display showed Earth rotating slowly, its blue oceans and green continents visible to everyone in the chamber. Ambassador Vasquez, Chancellor Vekthar said, his voice translated through the universal interface. He was Zanari, tall and crystalline, his body refracting light into rainbow patterns. The Galactic Council has debated for 6 months. We have reached our decision regarding humanity's membership. Elena waited. She had expected this moment since the preliminary meetings began. The other species had been polite but cold, their diplomatic smiles hiding obvious concern. In the 30 years since humanity joined the galactic community, your species has established 12 colony worlds. You have built 300 warships. Your population has spread across 15 light-years of space. Vekthar's crystal body pulsed with each word. The Council finds this expansion troubling. A Harani delegate, resembling a massive sea creature even in the oxygen atmosphere, spoke through its translator. Your species fought 42 wars on your homeworld in the last century alone. You have weapons designed specifically to kill your own kind. This is not normal. Elena kept her expression neutral. She had reviewed the histories of every Council species. Most had unified their homeworlds through peaceful federation or natural hive mind development. None had the bloody history of humanity, true, but none had humanity's drive either. We acknowledge our past, Elena said. We don't hide it. Every species has its nature, which is precisely why the Council has prepared the Protected Species Accord. Vekthar continued. A document materialized in the holographic space, thousands of pages of legal language. For your own benefit and the safety of the galactic community, humanity will accept certain limitations. Elena's jaw tightened. She had read the leaked draft. Now she listened as Vekthar outlined the terms. Humanity would be limited to 5 colony worlds total. 7 existing colonies would be evacuated and returned to Council administration. All human military vessels would be reduced to a maximum of 50 ships, used only for system defense. No faster-than-light weapons could be developed or deployed. Council observers would be permanently stationed on Earth and all remaining colonies, with authority to veto any military or colonial decisions. In exchange, Vekthar said, his tone suggesting great generosity, humanity will receive increased technology sharing, preferred trade status, and the Council's full protection. The chamber fell silent. Every species watched the human woman, waiting for gratitude or at least acceptance. They had spent 6 months crafting this agreement, carefully balancing restriction with just enough benefit to make it palatable. Elena looked up at the Council members surrounding her. She thought of the families on the colony worlds, the children born under alien stars who had never seen Earth. She thought of the shipyards orbiting Mars, where human engineers had designed vessels from scratch because Council technology always came with strings attached. She thought of her own daughter serving as a lieutenant on a patrol ship near the frontier. No, Elena said. The word echoed in the vast chamber. Several delegates leaned forward, their translation devices flickering as if they had malfunctioned. I apologize, Ambassador, Vekthar said slowly. Perhaps the translation was unclear. This is not a negotiation. The Council has decided. I understand perfectly, Chancellor. Elena's voice was steady and cold. And humanity's answer is no. We will not accept your Protected Species Accord. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not reduce our fleet. We will not accept observers who can override our sovereign decisions. A Cathari delegate, insectoid and quick-moving, chittered rapidly. You reject the Council's protection? Your species is barely 30 years into space travel. You are children compared to us. Then perhaps you should have treated us as children learning to walk, not as prisoners to be caged, Elena replied. She turned in a slow circle, addressing the entire chamber. You call this an accord. You call it protection. I call it what it is, colonialism wearing a diplomatic mask. How dare you, started a Vryn delegate. You dare not trust us because we are violent, Elena continued, her voice rising. Because we fought wars. Because we struggled and clawed our way to the stars instead of being handed the keys to the galaxy. You see our nature and decide we must be controlled. Your nature makes you dangerous, Vecthar said. We have maintained peace for 300 years. We will not allow. Peace built on suppression isn't peace. It's just delayed conflict. Elena pulled out a small device from her pocket. I have something to share with the Council. She activated the device. A hologram appeared, showing the vote tallies from Earth and all 12 colony worlds. The numbers were overwhelming, 96% in favor of a single resolution. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council effective immediately, Elena read from the document. We will maintain diplomatic relations with individual species who wish it. We will honor our existing trade contracts, but we will not accept chains no matter how golden they appear. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages, the universal translators struggling to keep up. Vecthar raised his crystalline arms, calling for order. You cannot survive without the Council, he said once the noise subsided. We control the primary trade routes. We have technology centuries beyond yours. We have allies and resources you cannot match. If you leave, we will be forced to implement sanctions, blockades, you will be isolated. Then we will adapt, Elena said quietly. Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and the nuclear fire. We have gone from caves to starships in 10,000 years. You think economic sanctions will break us? This is foolishness, the Harani delegate rumbled. In 10 years you will come crawling back begging to accept our terms. Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Perhaps, or perhaps you have made a terrible mistake. She gathered her papers and started toward the exit. One last thing, Council. We will remember this day. We will remember which species advocated for our freedom, and which voted to cage us. We will remember who stood with us and who tried to chain us. She paused at the doorway, looking back at the assembled delegates. Humanity chose the stars knowing the risks. We will face whatever comes next on our own terms. Goodbye, Council. Perhaps we will meet again someday. Perhaps not. Elena walked out, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet chamber. Behind her, the delegates sat in stunned silence, uncertain whether to feel relieved or concerned about what they had just witnessed. In the Council's private chambers later that evening, Vecthar addressed his closest advisors. They will collapse within a decade without our support, he said confidently. When they do, they will accept any terms we offer. This tantrum changes nothing. The advisors agreed, their various forms of communication all expressing the same sentiment. Humanity was young, foolish, and far too proud. Reality would teach them humility soon enough. None of them noticed the small human surveillance device attached to the underside of the conference table, quietly recording every word and transmitting it back to Earth through channels the Council did not know existed. The seeds of humanity's future had already been planted, growing in soil the Council would never think to examine. The game had begun, and only one side knew they were playing. The first year after the withdrawal was hell. Trade ships that had regularly delivered exotic materials to Earth and the colonies stopped coming. The quantum communication networks provided by Council technology went dark. Automated defense satellites, all running on Council-licensed software, suddenly locked humans out of their own security systems. Prices for basic goods tripled overnight as supply chains collapsed. On Earth, Maria Santos stood in line for 3 hours to buy synthetic protein rations. She was a teacher, 42 years old with 2 children and a husband who had lost his job when the Council-owned mining company pulled out of the asteroid belt. The ration card in her hand would feed her family for a week, maybe less if they were careful. Was it worth it? The man behind her asked. He was old, with a weathered face that had seen better times. All that pride and now we're starving. Maria thought about the question. She had voted to leave the Council, same as 96% of humanity. But standing in this line, watching her children go hungry, she wondered if they had made a mistake. Ask me in 50 years, she said finally. Across human space, the pattern repeated. Colonies that had relied on Council infrastructure struggled to maintain life support. Ships broke down without replacement parts. Medical supplies ran low. The Council's sanctions were efficient and brutal, designed to bring humanity to its knees within months. But humanity did not kneel. in a secret laboratory beneath the surface of Mars. Dr. James Chen worked 18-hour days on a project he could not tell his family about. The breakthrough came after 11 months of failures. He stared at the readings on his screen, checked them twice, then called his supervisor. "I've cracked it," he said, exhaustion and excitement mixing in his voice. "The Council's FTL communication system. I know how it works. More importantly, I know how to build one they can't monitor." Within 3 years, every human world was connected by what they called the silent network. Messages flowed freely across light years, invisible to Council surveillance. It was humanity's first secret, but it would not be the last. On the colony world of New Sparta, construction never stopped. Governor Rebecca Williams oversaw the transformation of an ordinary farming colony into something else entirely. Deep underground, massive shipyards took shape. Thousands of workers sworn to secrecy built vessels unlike anything in the Council's database. "How long until the first ship is operational?" Rebecca asked her chief engineer. 18 months, maybe less," he replied. "But Governor, the Council sends scout ships through this sector twice a year. If they find out what we're building—" "They won't," Rebecca said firmly. "From orbit, we look like farmers. They scan us, see agricultural centers and small settlements, and move on. They never look deeper because they think we're too stupid to hide anything." The engineer nodded slowly. "You're betting everything on their arrogance." "Their arrogance is our greatest weapon," Rebecca agreed. The second decade brought visible progress. Human colonies stopped struggling and started thriving. New farming techniques developed without Council technology increased food production by 400%. Medical research, freed from Council intellectual property restrictions, made breakthroughs in disease treatment that saved millions of lives. Energy production doubled, then tripled, as human engineers designed reactors that didn't rely on Council materials. Occasionally, Council scout ships encountered human vessels in neutral space. They always looked the same, small trading ships, slightly worn, carrying basic goods between colonies. The crews were polite but distant, offering minimal information before moving on. Council intelligence reports noted that humanity seemed to be maintaining its original 12 colonies, though economic activity was minimal. These reports were exactly what humanity wanted them to see. In reality, human scout ships had mapped 300 unclaimed systems beyond Council borders. Colony expeditions launched in secret, establishing outposts in regions the Council considered too remote or worthless to explore. By the 20th year after the withdrawal, humanity had 37 colony worlds. By the 30th year, 62, the shipyards multiplied. New Sparta was joined by Liberty Station, Defiance, and 7 other hidden construction facilities. Each one produced vessels designed with hard lessons from human history. Wars fought in Earth's orbit, battles that killed millions, conflicts that taught humanity how to fight in the dark of space. Commander Sarah Mitchell served on one of the new warships during its shakedown cruise. The TSS Relentless was nothing like the patrol boats humanity had operated during their Council membership. It was 3 times larger, with weapon systems that would make Council military advisors choke on their respiratory organs. Fire control. Status report, Sarah commanded from the captain's chair. Railgun capacitors at full charge. Missile tubes loaded. Point defense grid active. EMF pulse cannon ready, the weapons officer replied crisply. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Council thought humanity was barely surviving. They had no idea that ships like the Relentless were being produced at a rate of 50 per year across all the hidden yards. By the 40th year, human space had transformed into something the Council would not recognize. The Terran Sphere, as it was now called, encompassed 87 worlds and over 200 orbital stations. The population had swollen to 45 billion, with new citizens born every day who had never known Council rule. Agent Marcus Torres worked in intelligence, managing the deception that kept the Council blind. His job was to ensure that every piece of information reaching Council space painted humanity as weak, divided, and barely functional. "We've got a problem," his assistant said one morning. A Zanari merchant captain got nosy, followed one of our supply convoys and saw the New Sparta orbital ring. Marcus felt his stomach drop. The orbital ring was visible from space, a massive structure that supported 6 simultaneous shipyard operations. If the Council learned about it, everything would collapse. "Where is the captain now?" he asked, still in system. His ship is old, probably can't outrun a message drone. Marcus made a call he had hoped never to make. 3 hours later, the Zanari merchant ship suffered a catastrophic reactor failure that left no survivors and very little debris. Marcus filed the incident report personally, hating himself but knowing the alternative was worse. "How many?" he asked his assistant quietly. 17 crew members. Marcus closed his eyes. 17 lives to protect billions. It was not the first time he had made such a choice, and he knew it would not be the last. This was the price of freedom, paid in secrets and shadows. The 50th year approached, and humanity prepared for something the Council could not imagine. In the underground war rooms of New Sparta, Admiral Marcus Chen, James Chen's son, reviewed fleet readiness reports. 1,000 warships operational, another 3,000 in various stages of construction, 15,000 fighters and bombers, defense networks around every colony that could stop anything short of a full-scale invasion. "They still think we're barely holding on," one of his officers said, reading the latest Council intelligence summary. "Let them think it," Marcus replied. "Surprise is its own weapon." Elena Vasquez was 98 years old now, confined to a wheelchair but still sharp as a plasma cutter. She reviewed the reports from across human space with satisfaction. They had done it. They had not just survived the Council's sanctions, they had thrived in ways the Council would never understand. Was it worth it? Her granddaughter asked, echoing the question from 50 years earlier. Elena looked at the young woman who served as a lieutenant on one of the new carriers. She thought about the sacrifices, the hard years, the people who had died to keep the secret safe. "Ask me again when this is all over," Elena said. "But I think you already know the answer." The silent network hummed with activity, coordinating the efforts of 87 worlds. Shipyards worked around the clock. Soldiers trained in tactics the Council had forgotten centuries ago. Scientists pushed the boundaries of what was possible, unrestrained by Council limitations. Humanity had walked away from the Council's chains. Now they stood ready to show the galaxy what humans could become when they were free. They did not know that their greatest test was already crossing the dark spaces between galaxies, heading toward Council space with hunger and death in its wake. But they would be ready. Humanity was always ready. The Devourer fleet entered the Concordia system like a plague made manifest. 10,000 bioships, each one a living nightmare of organic technology and hungry purpose. They moved in perfect coordination, the hive mind controlling them all simultaneously. Council sensors registered their arrival and calculated the odds of survival. 0.03%. On Concordia Station, Admiral Court issued final orders to the 400 ships under his command. Form defensive sphere formation Delta. All civilian vessels are to evacuate immediately to the inner moons. Military vessels will buy them as much time as possible. His officers acknowledged the orders without complaint. They all knew this was a suicide mission. The best they could hope for was to delay the Devourers long enough for a few million refugees to escape. Maybe some would make it to the outer colonies. Maybe the Council would survive in some reduced form. Maybe was the best they had. The Devourer fleet advanced, their bioships pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that might have been beautiful if they were not so terrifying. Energy weapons charged, organic launchers prepared to fire projectiles grown from harvested matter. The range closed steadily, 5,000 kilometers, 4,000, 3,000. All ships weapons-free, Court ordered. Fire at will. The Council fleet opened fire, 400 ships unleashing everything they had. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, kinetic missiles. The barrage was impressive by Council standards, representing the full military might of a 47-species alliance. The Devourers adapted in real time. Their hulls shifted, armor thickening where impacts concentrated. Energy weapons were absorbed and redirected. Kinetic rounds were caught by organic nets and dissolved into raw materials. Within 90 seconds, the Council's weapons were less than 50% effective. "Sir, they are returning fire," the tactical officer reported unnecessarily. Everyone could see the organic projectiles launching from the Devourer fleet, thousands of them arcing through space. Then something impossible happened. The communication system crackled to life with a transmission on Council military frequencies. "Council forces, this is Terran Fleet Command. Reinforcements arriving in 60 seconds. Hold your fire and maintain defensive positions." Court stared at the communication panel. Terran, who? The humans, his second-in-command whispered. The humans are coming. Impossible. They do not have the ships or the space tore open. That was the only way to describe it. The fabric of reality split in 1,000 places simultaneously, and through those tiers came ships. Human ships, warships that made the council vessels look like toys. 1,000 strong, they emerged in perfect formation, their hulls painted with the emblem of Earth, a blue and green sphere surrounded by stars. Leading them was a vessel twice the size of any council ship, its designation painted in letters 10 meters tall, TSS Defiant. Admiral Marcus Chen sat in the command chair of the Defiant, watching the tactical display with the calm focus of someone who had trained for this moment his entire life. He was 47 years old, had been in the military since he was 18, and had never fought a real battle because humanity had spent 50 years preparing in secret. Today, all that preparation would be tested. All ships, execute attack pattern Omega-7, Marcus ordered. Target prioritization to fleet AI. Weapons free on my mark. The human fleet split into coordinated strike groups with a precision that shocked the watching council forces. They had obviously drilled this maneuver thousands of times, moving as one despite being 1,000 separate vessels. Council forces, this is Admiral Chen. We will handle the Devourers. Maintain your defensive sphere around the station. If any bioships break through our lines, destroy them. Court found his voice. Admiral Chen, we appreciate your assistance, but there are 10,000 enemy vessels. Your fleet cannot watch us, Marcus said simply. Then, all ships, Mark. The human fleet opened fire, and the battle began in earnest. Their weapons were nothing like what the Council used. Railguns accelerated projectiles to relativistic speeds, hitting with the force of small nuclear weapons. Swarm missile systems launched hundreds of independently targeting warheads that wove through devourer formations like schools of metallic fish. EMF pulse cannons fired beams of focused electromagnetic energy that scrambled the bioship's organic control systems. And then, there were the Kasaba howitzers, humanity's most devastating weapon. 3 ships in the human fleet were dedicated howitzer platforms, each one carrying nuclear-pumped directed energy weapons. They fired and directed nuclear explosions vaporized everything in their path. Devourer bioships simply ceased to exist, torn apart at the molecular level. The Devourers attempted to adapt, their hive mind processing this new threat. But humanity had learned from the Council's mistakes. The human ships constantly changed tactics, rotating through weapon types and attack patterns every 30 seconds. Before the Devourers could fully adapt to railguns, the humans switched to missiles. Before the bioships could counter missiles, EMF pulses disrupted their coordination. Sir, the enemy is attempting to flank us, the tactical officer reported on the Defiance bridge. Marcus studied the display. A group of 2,000 Devourer ships was trying to circle around the human formation and strike at the station directly. Smart move, but predictable. Dispatch strike groups 7 through 12 to intercept. Authorization to use tactical nuclear warheads. 600 human ships broke formation and moved to intercept the flanking force. Space lit up with nuclear fire as they engaged, their shields absorbing radiation that would have killed Council crews instantly. Human ships were built with one principle in mind: survive anything, hit harder than anything. On Concordia Station, Vecthar watched through the external cameras, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. The humans were not just fighting the Devourers. They were winning. The bioships that had destroyed Council fleets with contemptuous ease were being systematically demolished by human weapons and tactics. How? He whispered. How do they have such ships? Such weapons? They left us 50 years ago with barely 100 vessels. A junior aide pulled up intelligence reports, what little information the Council had gathered about humanity over the decades. Sir, our last confirmed sighting of human military vessels was 43 years ago. A small patrol force near the frontier. Since then we have only encountered civilian ships. And we assumed they had nothing else, Vecthar said bitterly. We assumed our sanctions had crippled them. We assumed wrong. The battle raged for 18 hours, the longest continuous space engagement in recorded history. Human ships cycled through attack patterns, rotated damaged vessels back for repairs, and maintained constant pressure on the Devourer fleet. They lost ships, 127 by the final count, But for every human vessel destroyed, the Devourers lost 50. 8 hours into the battle, a critical moment arrived. A group of Devourer bioships broke through the human lines and made directly for Concordia Station. Court's Council forces engaged them immediately, but 5 bioships reached the station's hull and began boarding operations. Seal the outer sections, Court ordered. All available personnel to defense stations. On the station, species who had never held weapons in their lives now grabbed plasma rifles and prepared to defend their families. The Devourers came through the hull in waves, organic killing machines that adapted to every defense. Then human Marines arrived. They came through the docking ports in powered armor, carrying weapons that seemed excessive even by human standards. Sergeant Daniel Torres led his squad through the corridor where Zanari civilians were making their last stand against 3 Devourer organisms. Get behind us, Daniel ordered. His squad opened fire with explosive rounds, plasma cutters, and flamethrowers. The Devourers tried to adapt, but humans fought dirty. When one weapon stopped working, they switched to another. When weapons ran out, they used their armored fists. Vecthar was directing evacuation efforts when a Devourer organism crashed through his door. His guards fired their weapons, but the creature adapted and charged forward. Vecthar stumbled backward, knowing he was about to die. A human Marine appeared from nowhere, tackled the Devourer, and drove an energy blade through its central mass. The creature thrashed, its biology desperately trying to adapt to this new threat. But the human held on. The blade burned hotter, and the Devourer finally died. The Marine stood up, his armor damaged and leaking atmosphere. He removed his helmet, revealing a young man no more than 25 years old. Chancellor Vecthar? Are you hurt, sir? No, thank you. What is your name? Private First Class Miguel Santos, Terran Marines, 2nd Division. He swayed slightly, and Vecthar saw the blood leaking from his armor's joints. You are injured, Vecthar said. Just a scratch, sir. I need to... Miguel collapsed, the adrenaline finally wearing off. Medical teams arrived moments later and rushed him to emergency surgery. In space, the battle reached its conclusion. The human fleet had destroyed 8,000 Devourer bioships. The remaining 2,000, recognizing they could not win, retreated back into dark space. Marcus watched them go, resisting the urge to pursue. Let them run, he said. They will report back to the main hive mind that humanity is not easy prey. Maybe they will think twice before coming back. The human fleet secured the system, establishing patrol patterns and defensive G 3 weeks after the battle. Representatives from all 47 council species gathered in the restored council chambers on Concordia Station. The walls still bore scorch marks from the Devourer boarding action, deliberately left as a reminder of how close they had come to extinction. The chamber was packed with delegates, military officers, refugees who had earned the right to witness this moment, and one elderly human woman in a wheelchair. Elena Vasquez was 102 years old. Her body was failing, kept alive by medical technology that humanity had developed in their isolation. Her mind remained sharp, though, and her eyes still held the same determination they had carried 50 years ago when she walked out of this very chamber. Chancellor Vecthar stood at the center platform, but this time he was not alone. Admiral Marcus Chen stood beside him, as did representatives from the Terran sphere, a term that still confused many council species. Vecthar's crystalline body was dimmer than it had been, the color of someone who had seen too much and slept too little. This council is called to order, Vecthar said. His voice echoed through the chamber, translated into 47 languages simultaneously. We gather in the shadow of our greatest defeat and our unexpected salvation. 3 weeks ago, the species we once tried to control saved us from certain destruction. Today we must decide what comes next. He turned to Elena, who had insisted on making the journey from Earth despite her doctor's protests. Ambassador Vasquez, you spoke in this chamber 50 years ago. I invite you to speak again. Elena's wheelchair moved forward, powered by subtle technology that made no sound. A holographic display activated above her, showing star maps that made several delegates gasp. The maps showed not 12 human worlds, but 87. They showed shipyards, defense networks, and population centers that rivaled anything in council space. Members of the Galactic Council, Elena began, her voice amplified by the chamber's systems. 50 years ago you offered us protection we did not need and chains we would not accept. You believed humanity would collapse without your guidance. You were wrong. She gestured to the display. The Terran sphere encompasses 87 worlds and over 200 orbital stations. Our population is 45 billion citizens. Our fleet consists of 15,000 warships and supporting vessels. Our economy is completely independent of council trade networks. We do not say this to boast, but to establish the reality of what we have become. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Several delegates were already accessing their own intelligence databases, trying to verify these impossible claims. The numbers checked out. Humanity had gone from 12 struggling colonies to a major galactic power in complete secrecy. How did you hide this from us? A Qatari delegate demanded. Our scout ships patrol those regions regularly. You saw what we wanted you to see, Elena replied calmly. Small trading vessels, struggling colonies. You looked and assumed you understood what you were looking at. You never looked deeper because you believed us incapable of deception on such a scale. Your arrogance was our shield, Vekthar spoke. Ambassador Vasquez, the Council owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. We ask you to return to the Council, to take your place among us as equals. We will grant you full membership with no restrictions, no oversight, no conditions. You have earned this through blood and sacrifice. Elena was quiet for a moment, looking around the chamber at the species who had once tried to cage her kind. She thought of Maria Santos, the teacher who had stood in ration lines during the hard years. She thought of Dr. James Chen, who had built the silent network. She thought of Rebecca Williams, who had overseen the secret shipyards. She thought of Marcus Torres, who had made terrible choices to keep humanity's secret safe. She thought of every human who had suffered and sacrificed for this moment. No, Elena said simply. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted questions and protests. Vekthar raised his arms, calling for silence. You refuse to return? He asked, confusion evident in his translated voice. Why? Because we have learned something important in our 50 years alone, Elena said. We have learned that we do not need the Council's permission to exist. We do not need your approval to thrive. We do not need your membership to have value. She paused, letting that sink in. But we also learned that we cannot stand apart from the galaxy. The Devourers proved that. Isolation is not strength. It is simply loneliness. She brought up another display, this one showing a document that her team had worked on for 3 weeks. Humanity does not return to join your council. Instead, we offer you a partnership. We call it the Treaty of Two Skies. The document appeared on every delegate's personal display. They read in silence, and the silence stretched as they processed what they were seeing. The Treaty of Two Skies proposed a complete restructuring of galactic governance. The Council would continue to exist, but its power would be limited to diplomatic coordination and economic cooperation. The Protected Species Accord would be abolished entirely, replaced with a mutual defense pact that treated all species as equals regardless of age or military strength. Humanity would not join the Council, but would become a co-equal protector of Council space, maintaining its independence while cooperating on matters of mutual security. This is outrageous, a Vryn delegate sputtered. You demand we dismantle 3 centuries of governmental structure? We demand nothing, Elena corrected. We offer an alternative. You can accept it, negotiate it, or reject it. But understand this. Humanity will not submit to Council authority ever again. We will either be your equal partners or we will remain separate. The choice is yours. A Hurani representative spoke, its deep voice rumbling through the translation system. And if we reject this proposal? What then? Then we leave, Elena said bluntly. We will maintain diplomatic relations with individual species who wish it. We will honor existing trade agreements, but we will not protect Council space from the Devourers or any other threat. You will be on your own as you were 3 weeks ago. The threat was not subtle, but Elena had learned 50 years ago that sometimes you needed to be direct. The Council had almost fallen to the Devourers. Without human military strength, they would fall the next time. Everyone in the chamber knew it. This is extortion, the Vryn delegate said angrily. This is reality. Marcus Chen spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had just fought an 18-hour battle. The galaxy has changed. The Devourers are still out there regrouping. More threats will come. You need warriors, and the Council forgot how to fight 3 centuries ago. Humanity remembers. We are offering our strength, but we will not be controlled while doing it. Vekthar looked around the chamber, seeing fear and anger on alien faces. He thought about the refugees still crowded into emergency shelters. He thought about the 23 worlds that no longer existed. He thought about Private Miguel Santos, the young human who had taken a killing blow meant for him and might never walk again. "I support the Treaty of Two Skies," Vecthar said clearly. "Humanity has proven their worth and earned their independence. We cannot demand submission from those who saved us." "I vote yes." The chamber fell silent again. Vecthar was the council chancellor, and his opinion carried significant weight. But the decision required a majority vote. Admiral Court spoke next. "The Cathari delegation votes yes. We need allies, not subjects." One by one, delegates stood and announced their positions. Some voted yes enthusiastically. Others voted yes reluctantly, knowing they had no real choice. 4 species abstained, unable to support such a radical change but unwilling to oppose humanity openly. When the count finished, 43 species had voted yes, 4 had abstained, and none had voted no. The Treaty of Two Skies was approved. Elena closed her eyes, feeling relief and exhaustion in equal measure. They had done it. Humanity had walked away from the Council's chains, survived 50 years of isolation and hardship, returned to save their former oppressors, and secured a future of genuine equality. "This treaty is not perfect," Elena said, opening her eyes. "We will argue about details. We will disagree on implementation. But this is how equals work together, through debate and compromise, not through dominance and submission." Over the next 6 months, the Treaty of Two Skies was implemented. Human and Council military forces began coordinating defense strategies. Joint patrols were established in frontier regions where the devourers might return. Trade agreements were renegotiated on fair terms. The Protected Species Accord was formally dissolved, and several species who had been restricted under it began expanding their territories for the first time in centuries. Elena Vasquez died in her sleep 6 months after the treaty was signed. She was buried on Earth with full honors, her funeral attended by representatives from every council species. Vecthar himself delivered a eulogy, his crystalline body flickering with colors that indicated deep respect and regret. "She was the voice that reminded us of our failures," Vecthar said. "She lived long enough to see humanity become what we feared and respected. She taught us that freedom cannot be given. It must be taken and defended. We will remember her as the woman who said no to the entire galaxy and made that no stick." In the